Welcome to the Consciously Inspired Minds podcast, where we ditch the default and live life by design. I'm your host, Brandy White, personal growth enthusiast, entrepreneur, and lifestyle coach. I host conversations with creators, entrepreneurs, healers, and educators committed to living a life of truth, intention, and connection. Understanding how to evoke their higher nature, our guests take us on a journey of what it means to embody a life of conscious inspiration, joy, impact, and service. Get ready to be inspired. Welcome to Consciously Inspired Minds. Today, I have an amazing guest, Katie Kruithof. I'm so excited for you all to meet her. Katie is the owner of Yeah Baby Goods and mama to the sweetest 4 kiddos whose ages range from 2.5 months to 9 years. She started Yeah Baby Goods in 2016 when she first dreamed of making the popular IKEA highchair even better with a few simple accessories. She is blessed to work side by side with her husband, Brent, and as they raise their kids and business as equal partners. Family togetherness and being a source of encouragement to young parents are the greatest passions. They are incredibly thankful for Yeah Baby Goods, giving them the opportunity to pursue both. So Katie, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Brandy.
Oh, of course. I'm so excited for our listeners to get to know you today. Katie and I live in the same community. When Katie moved into this community, we met at a neighborhood block party. So it was her, and at the time, her 3 children. I have to say, I told her this the day I met her. They are the most adorable family I have ever seen. When I laid eyes on those sweet kiddos of yours, oh my goodness. When I laid eyes on those sweet kiddos of yours, I thought, I just want to go meditate with these kids. They just looked so full of ease and just so kind and sweet. You and your husband were so kind and sweet as well. And then we came over for dinner and got to know each other better. And I walked into her house. Let me tell you, what an eye for design that Katie and her husband Brent have. Amazing. Amazing. So when I think of the two of you, I think of the next Chip and Joanna Gaines, that sort of situation. And I always joke with Katie and I tell her, I'm like, listen,
that is quite a compliment.
It is so true. And I tell Katie, I'm like, listen, I think HGTV is coming after you guys. You guys need your own reality show. Something needs to be going on here. You need to be redoing people's homes and bringing the beauty and the aesthetic into the lives of other people because it is just incredible. So yeah, I just had to go ahead and add on to that.
Oh my gosh, Brandy, you're so sweet. You're making me blush over here.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Receive it, my friend, receive it. So I just want to thank you again for being on the show today. And I know now Katie and her husband have 4 kiddos, but we'll get into that here in a moment. So Katie, I want all the listeners to know as we kind of kick things off today, tell us a little bit about Yeah Baby Goods and how that started for you. Just to give listeners sort of a baseline of this company and what you all offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started this, like you said, back in 2016. It actually was not our first jump into the entrepreneurial world. When we got married back in 2006, Brent was a public accountant. I was in marketing research, and we both kind of graduated from college with the dreams of just kind of climbing the corporate ladder and just maxing out that like business professional life. And we did that for a couple of years. And very soon into my marketing research job, I realized it was just suffocating me. I hated going to the office every day. I hated being in a cubicle. I hated being away from my home and from Brent so much. And it was just giving me so much anxiety. So I tried to get out of that job, but they kind of hooked me in and kept me on part-time. But meanwhile, I started a different business. My first business that I started was wedding album design. So it'd be like photographers would send me pictures. I would design the wedding album and then send the files to a print and bind company. So that was my first dabble in being a small business owner, I suppose. And it was so low risk because there was no inventory. It was service based. It was just me. There was no overhead at all. So I did that part-time along with my marketing research for a pretty long time. And then Brent got the opportunity with PricewaterhouseCoopers, the accounting firm he was with, to do 2 years in the Cayman Islands. So we did that back in 2010.
Oh, wow.
It was incredible. It was so amazing, partly just because Brent and I lived in town in Cincinnati with all my family. So it was just a really unique experience to be like, it's just the two of us on our own, making our way, only having each other to lean on. So it was great for our relationship. But it also was life-changing in another way in that I think both of us, the draw of that corporate life or accumulating a large amount of wealth, which there was a ton of in the Cayman Islands, lost some of its appeal for us. And so I think we started getting this dream in our head of something else. Whereas like the work-life balance was a lot better in the Cayman Islands for a public accountant. But I knew that once we came back to the States, it would be Brent's really crazy work hours again. He'd go back to these, like basically his busy season lasted from January till beginning of May. So there was this long amount of time where he would just be getting up and leaving before I woke up and getting home after I went to bed. And like we missed each other for months. And so while we were in the Cayman Islands spending so much time together and enjoying this better work-life balance, after those 2 years were up and we knew we wanted to come home and start a family, it was like, let's dream of something else besides this corporate life where we don't get to spend very much time together. So that was actually when we started our second business, which was Brent's business. And it was a exercise equipment. It was called Fly Up Fitness. And he started that in like 2012. And it had a long, slow start to it because it was so different than a service-based industry. It was something where we had to get molds made and figure out creating the product and CAD designs and like the whole like shipping and all of those kind of things that we had never tackled before. So in my head, when we came home, I was like, oh, we'll give this 6 months and we'll be on Shark Tank and we'll be in Walmart and it'll be just amazing. And it was like so quick that I realized like, that's not
Dream
what
big, right?
Starting a small business is at all like. It was one of those things where it was like, took much longer than I thought. And in that time, my heart changed so much where it was like, I just wanted this kind of instant success. And I defined success really differently than I would now, where it was like, still like this, like accumulate wealth, get a lot of respect from other people, become this name. And it was in this time that Brent was doing Fly Up Fitness that we had our first son, Gio. He was born in 2013. And at that point, I was still doing my wedding album design business, but that was our only source of income. So we got to a place where it was like, we either need to like sell our house and seriously downsize, or we need to have Brent quit and go back to the corporate world, whatever that looks like, a steady income that we can depend on. And in that short time that we had both quit our jobs and were raising Gio together, it became so obvious to me that it was like, I would give up the house. I would give up having 2 cars. I would give up so much in order for Brent and I to continue pursuing this life of family togetherness and having him be a very engaged father. It wasn't like I was a solo stay-at-home mom and he'd come home and not really know much about what Gio likes, how he takes his breakfast, what clothes he prefers to wear, what songs we sing at nap time. Like he was every bit as engaged as I was. We were doing side-by-side business and parenting. And once I got a taste of that, I was like, I would give up all of those things, the fancy house, the ease of health insurance and knowing where your paycheck comes. It was like, if I had to hold those side by side, it was a no-brainer. I wanted Brent to continue this. So we did. We made huge sacrifices. We became a 1-car family. We sold what I thought was my dream house in Cincinnati and got this tiny little house that was very cozy, but very, very small. And we just kind of lived on this minimalist lifestyle where it was like, you don't get everything you dream of physically, like materially, but you're gaining so much else. And so that was really what gave us this like vision of like family togetherness and parenting equally and running a business equally. So, sorry, this is a really long answer about Baby Goods, but in order to get there, Fly Up Fitness.
No, I love this.
I know it's like a long background, but it kind of tells our whole story where it's like Fly Up Fitness was doing great. Once it launched, it like had this moment where there was a viral Facebook video, which that was back in the days of like Facebook instead of Instagram. And I forget, it had something like 50 million views. It was just insane. And Brent was asked to, I mean, it was a video of him working out with his kids, which was really like a testimony to like this people's desire to see a family together doing hobbies and work together. And also just a really present dad, which is something that I feel like a lot of, typical Americans might not see that much. And so to see a dad who is choosing to spend time with his kids and invest in them, this video just got big. And he got invited to be on Fox and Friends. So we went to New York for that. And it was like during all this time that I was like, you know, my son's using this IKEA high chair. So it is all wrapping back to Baby Goods, but he's using this IKEA high chair. And I was like, there are a few, I love this chair because it's super cheap. It was $20 at the time. It's super easy to clean and it's very minimal. But I knew there were a couple flaws with it that it was like, these would be easy fixes to do. And I kind of like pitched some of the ideas to my friends who I was like, you should totally do this. And nobody was jumping on it. So I was like, well, we've learned a lot through starting Fly Up Fitness about creating products and that kind of thing. And so it was supposed to be a very small side thing, like a small Etsy shop. And we, it was one of those things where it's like, you know, it was something we wanted in our own house and nobody was making it. And so I was like, oh, well, we can make it. So we started making cushions for this IKEA high chair and silicone tray placemats. And those were the two products that we launched our Etsy shop with. And when we launched it, that was when Fly Up Fitness was kind of at its height of success. And I was like, why are we even doing this? Like, this is just a silly little thing. But it's like, well, we already had all the product. Let's go ahead and do it. And so we did. And just very naturally over the course, that was, like I said, 2016, very naturally over the course of the last 7 years now, it just kind of became a flip-flop.
Can you believe that?
Fly Up Fitness was going like gradually down and Baby Goods was going gradually up, and we just kind of switched gears and switched focus. And so we started investing more of our time and resources in Baby Goods and adding more accessories to that IKEA high chair, like footrest that attach to the leg, and the IKEA high chair has silver legs, so we made these adhesive leg wraps that can make them look like wood legs. And so like we just really went all in on coming up with new products for Baby Goods. And for a while it was still my thing and Brent was Fly Up Fitness, and Baby Goods got to the point where it was like Brent was helping me with that, and then eventually he was doing full time with me with that, and then we were hiring employees with that. And so in just a really natural way, I felt like Baby Goods grew. And at the same time, our excitement around the community that we were building there and what God was doing there also grew. And so now here we are 7 years later, both of us working on Baby Goods, and both of us keeping that same vision of family togetherness, trying to spend as much time together as a family, whether it's in business or in schooling or in adventuring. That's really like one of the main values that we hold. And Baby Goods is really a tool that allows us to do that. And that's my answer. I warned you I rambled.
I love that answer. Listen, that was beautiful. It's a wonderful story. It's a wonderful story. There's so many pieces of it that I'm still curious about. For some of our listeners, Katie, because we're here really trying to, as I say, ditch the default and live life by design. So I was so excited to have you on because you really model living life by design, living life by your own terms, by your own values as an individual and as a family. And so what I love to do when speaking with guests and living a consciously inspired life is really equipping our listeners with some tips and potential resources to think about when they are in a situation where they might be feeling stuck, or, wow, she has this life that she is feeling really aligned to in her authenticity, But how do I get there? How do I begin to take those steps into living a life that feels authentic to who I really am? I want to go back to the moment you had said where you sold the house, you sold the cars, you sold the things, you kind of leaned into more of a modest lifestyle. Take me back to that time. Was it fearful? Were you excited? Obviously, it's something that you wanted to pursue. So it was something that was really on your heart. How did you kind of move through that? How did you and Brent get through that moment together?
Yeah, my head's kind of spinning because there's so many thoughts that come to mind when I think of that. So we got to that point in 2015. So it was like my husband had been doing this about 3 years. We had a 2-year-old and I was pregnant with my second son. And we were like, a change just has to be made because
Wow.
we just can't continue this. We can't pay our mortgage anymore. We basically burned through our savings is what had happened. And like I said, it was always, I had this house of ours that was our first house. I had it on such a pedestal and I loved this house. It was my dream house. It was a historic house on the west side of Cincinnati. And even when we lived in the Cayman Islands, I refused to sell it. Like we rented it out because I was like, when we come back, I want to move back to this house. So like when we bought this house, my mentality was the reason we ended up on the west side of Cincinnati is because it's a lot less expensive. So I was like, I just want the most house, the most fancy for my money. And so it's like, I don't know if it's a source of like a desire for comfort or for impressing people, but like that was my goal when we bought that house. And it was a super impressive house, more impressive than we could have gotten on the east side with that amount of money. And so the ironic thing is my whole family's on the east side of Cincinnati. All of my friends, every connection I have is on the east side. And we moved to the west side away from everybody really because of this house that I just wanted so much. Fast forward, now we're at like the place where it's like, we can't afford this house anymore and we need to make a change. And like I said, it was pretty easy to make that change when I realized it was like Brent going back to work or keeping this house, this thing that I loved so much. It was like, well, that's a no-brainer. Like at that part, like God had changed my heart and my priorities so much. It was like, okay, I'm all in on keeping Brent at home and keeping us doing this family life together. By that point, we had written a family mission statement that we felt really strong about and that was used to help guide our decision making. And being this united family team was a large part of that family mission statement. And so that really helped filter decisions for us in business and parenting and where we live. When we were looking for our next house, the biggest factor was we had very, very, very little money. And so it had to be something that we could afford. And the second factor is like, I don't want to be away from my family. We're about to have our second kid. In addition to family togetherness with our like immediate family, it became really important to have multi-generational family connectedness. And so my parents were still on the east side. All my sisters, I have three sisters, they were all on the east side. And I was like, we're moving back to the east side and we're going to try to move as close to my parents as possible because at that time I valued the help coming up with our second kid. And so
yes, the support.
We circled their neighborhood and we just like, we wrote letters and stuck it in everybody's mailbox in that neighborhood. And we prayed over houses that we thought like, this is listed too high, but maybe we can get it cheaper. And what ended up happening was this incredible thing. The street right behind there, so you kind of could cut through their backyard. This house, it was a foreclosure house, went for sale. And it was basically like, one day open house, everybody could put in an offer and whatever was the highest offer at the end of the day, that's the one they're taking. And so we were like, we rushed through this house so fast. I don't remember hardly anything about it. It was, had been closed up for a couple of years and there was a ton of people there all looking at it. And we prayed about like, God, what do you want us to offer in this house? And he told us $77,777. And so that was our offer. And they called us that night and they were like, wow, you got the house. And I was like, I don't even remember the house. We walked through it so fast. There were so many people there, but it was such an answer to prayer because honestly, that mortgage, I don't know, it was something like $300 a month. It was so dirt cheap. And it was like, we barely have to sell any flowers to be able to cover that at this point. It took such a weight off our shoulders. It was the hugest gift from God. So to answer your question in a really roundabout way, I was very nervous about, like, where are we going to end up? We looked at some houses that were absolute pits, where it was like, I can't believe I'm thinking about bringing my family into this house. It's a mess, but it's like the only thing we could afford. And in the end, this foreclosed house, it actually was like a really sweet space. It needed some cosmetic stuff, but it wasn't major. And we just got this amazing deal on it. And it was one of those ways where it's like the Lord is so clearly providing for us. Each of those times, each of those incidents that happens, it builds your faith so much. So when the next scary thing happens, you're like, whoa, wait, I remember when God took care of this last time. And if he took care of me on that, why can't he do it again in this time? And it's like looking back in your life and having that theme of remembrance and seeing God's provision and how, like, when you depend on him, he shows up. It was like each of those new scary things we encountered through baby goods or through family or choices we had to make, it really helped each one be less scary, where now I feel like we're not that intimidated by risk or sacrifice, because it's like I know that amazing things can happen through that, and you really get to see the Lord show up in new ways. So did I cover all that?
No, it absolutely does. I think that's such a testament to your point around feeling supported through big decisions and big life changes, is that it can be so scary, but there comes that moment of reckoning where it's like, okay, wow, I have a newfound perspective on what my definition of family togetherness looks like, feels like. So how and what do we do to make sure that we are living a life that feels most aligned to how we see our future and how we want to build this future for ourselves and our family? And whatever that thing is, whatever is heavy on your heart and keeps coming back and whispering in your ear, nudging you and tapping you on the shoulder as a reminder to say, this is what you truly want, we have to listen to that. And we talk about that a lot, which is on Consciously Inspired Minds, around trusting yourself, listening and trusting that intuition. And to your point, when you take those big leaps of faith, if you will, it is amazing how, call it what you want, call it God, source, universe, whatever feels aligned to you, shows up and supports and provides what you need at the time. Once you begin to take that risk, it gives you evidence of that support. Those risks don't feel as heavy on you moving forward because you've already experienced that magnificent support, that miraculous support that you received in making that big life change, making that big decision, whatever that might be for you, giving you more confidence in moving forward. And then a desire to continue to live that consciously inspired life that feels authentic to you, because you then understand the result and the feeling that comes with that. That feeling of knowing material things, anything outside of myself is not going to bring the feeling of family togetherness, feeling connected. When you take a moment of pause, listen to that intuition, listen to those passions, that purpose, it's easy to then make that first move, to keep that momentum going, no matter how big or small, which is what we talk a lot about here as well, is just make a move that feels most aligned to you. So I'm really curious as well, when you and Brent had come to this value of family togetherness, tell me a little bit about your childhood and your upbringing and why this family togetherness became such a value to you. Is it something that you experienced as a child?
Yeah, it actually is. Both Brent and I came from very close-knit families. My parents are in Cincinnati, along with my three sisters, like I said. So I came from a family of four girls. And I'm very close with both of my parents. Obviously, like, we all still want to live by them. It's a very unique situation where actually even a lot of my all of my extended family, like my aunts and uncles on my mom's side, are all still in Cincinnati too. And so we have a very large community just based on our family. But growing up, I was very close with both my mom and dad. Faith was a really important thing in my home and in Brent's home. Both grew up in Christian homes, and that was instilled very deeply in us, and something that, like, as we became adults, went to college and got married, it was something that you had to discover in new ways and evaluate, like, is my parents' faith still the faith I have? And like, you encounter God from like what's been put into your family that continues to grow. But it was definitely a huge foundation for both of us. And my sisters were my very best friends all throughout school, still are. And so I think it was this idea of the family is a place where you get poured into, where you hear the truth of your identity. And then when you go out into the world and you're hearing other messages about who you are and what you're capable of, like, we both had a very firm family foundation where it's like, that's not who I am. If you're telling me something counter to like the truths that have been like poured into me my whole life, it's easier to be like, the other voices aren't the loudest ones in your head anymore, because you know you have such a strong foundation in your identity and who you are and why you matter. And that was something that both Brent and I got to experience growing up, is something for sure that played a large part in why it was so important to us to really pour into our family and our children. I just believe it's the most powerful tool to raise individuals who have a strong identity, who have experienced love and forgiveness and patience and conflict resolution in the home. And then with the purpose of, now I'm all filled up from the love I've received in the home, and I can pour it out into others. And so it's never the goal to just be like, we're this tight-knit family that, like, we're in a bubble and we love each other so much we don't need anybody else. Like, the goal is like, we are so filled up in our home, like, now we're overflowing with love to bring out to other people and to share that fullness that we feel in our own identity, and to be able to speak that into other people. And so that's kind of the goal around family togetherness. Is a tight-knit family is a powerful team, more so than individuals all pursuing different things. But if you can get your family on board on the same mission, you can accomplish so much more than if everybody's split on different things. And so that's why having a strong family mission statement that we follow and that we teach our kids about, so like we can all be like chasing after the same thing and using our individual strengths to make that vision a reality. It's just I feel like it's such an underused tool in society, is like the family unit and what we can accomplish when we work together.
That's so interesting. And this takes me back to a post that you made on, I think it was Instagram, around the fact that you have 4 children. And people are like, how do you do it all? Oh my goodness, you have 4 children, you have a business that you're running, a home, a husband, all these things. And you're like, no, no, no. Our children are our assets. We are a team. Like, we are all in this together on this similar mission, to your point. Tell me a little bit about that. I thought that was such a powerful, empowering post, had so much truth to it. Tell me a little bit more about that and how you all work as a team.
The reason I made that post was, like you said, like, whenever I'm out and about with 4 kids, you just get so many comments. And I grew up in a family of 4 kids. So it's Brent always tells me 4 kids is a large, small family, and 5 kids is a small, large family. And so it's like, we're right on the cusp there.
Yeah.
You get comments just like, oh, your hands are full. And it's always, or I believe a lot of times, they're not being malicious about it. It's just like a thing people say, or like, oh, you look busy, or you must hit your bed exhausted at night, or I could never do that, or are you crazy, 4 kids? And so it was like, my kids are hearing this every time I'm out with them. And that's not the truth I want them to believe. Like, I didn't make a mistake in having 4 kids. Each one of them was wanted. And each one of them, when we added it to our team, we're like, our team just got stronger. Like, when we celebrate birthdays, we're celebrating the individual, but we're celebrating the team, because we're like, when you came onto the team, when you entered our team, you made our team even better, even more powerful. And so that's how we see each of our kids. And so I was like, I need to change the language that they're hearing, and I need to speak truth into them. And whether it's just not I'm a people pleaser. I'm very anti-conflict. So like when people would make those comments, I'd be like, yeah. But I'm like, I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm gonna instead be like, I'm so like, if they're like, are you crazy? Like you have four, I'm like, I'm not crazy. I am so happy we have these four. And that's what I want my kids to hear coming out of my voice is like, I wouldn't take any of these kids back. Like, or when they say your hands are full, I'm like, yeah, but my heart is even fuller. Like, I'm changing the narrative on this because families are extremely important and not something that we went into accidentally and we're like, whoa, how did we end up with four? What's going on? It was like, we saw each kid as a direct gift and like an addition to the team that's like, this is making us even better. So to that point, it's like, I can see in my four kids and in Brent and I, we are all wired really differently. We all have very different personalities, different bends. We see the world through different eyes, and we all have different strengths. And so I think that's what makes a family so awesome is one, you're learning how to interact with people that are really different from you in a very like face to face way every day where it's like you're going to encounter people that are different from you all over the place. And we're getting really good practice on being like, hey, Gio receives love this way, but Pfeiffer receives it this way, or Gio's feelings are hurt with this, but Decker's feelings get hurt over this. And it's just giving us a more sensitivity to different kinds of people. And even more fun than that is looking at their strengths and being like, it's not easy for me to go up in the park to somebody and strike up a conversation with a stranger, but it's super easy for my daughter Pfeiffer to do that. So if my goal is to bring hope and bring light to other people, Pfeiffer is a tool on my team where she's going to get the ball rolling. She's going to run over to a little girl and strike up a conversation. And then I'm going to feel awkward if I don't go over and talk to the mom. And then I have an amazing conversation with the mom. And I feel like we connect on so many levels. And I'm like, hey, if Pfeiffer wouldn't have put me out of my comfort zone, I would have totally missed this opportunity. And so I think it's neat to see how your different kids are like, hey, that's a really valuable part. And I could pinpoint each of those things for each of my kids where it's like, our team was missing this until you came into it. And to really like kind of speak truth over your kids and be like, be aware of this. This is something you've got that none of us have. And we needed you for this. And that builds their confidence so much. It speaks to who they are and what they're capable of. I think it's really neat to be able to pinpoint those in people and be like, our team is stronger because you're on it. And each new member we added, that was the way I viewed it, where it's not like draining us of our resources. It's adding to us. Like you said, there are assets. They're like the best assets we have in our family to accomplish our mission.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's amazing. And I always say too, like my two girls have been such expanders for me, kind of mirrors for me as well. Where have I seen some of my insecurities lie? And they're quite the opposite. And then giving each of us opportunity to expand in different ways. There's something so special about that. So, Katie, it is evident that you and your family have such a tight bond and connection. When we bring it back to Yeah Baby Goods, not only are you all offering a beautiful high chair, but you're also empowering young parents. So I just want to read for the listeners. As you visit yeahbabygoods.com, you can go to learn at the top of the page, and you are welcomed by Katie and her family. If you're just discovering Yeah Baby Goods and wondering what they're all about, I want to read this for the listeners. We are a husband and wife team who wanted to make the best-selling high chair even better. Our accessories not only make the IKEA high chair cuter, but also make it safer by helping establish proper eating posture. With over 50,000 possible combinations, you can customize to the max and make it uniquely yours. And what an adorable photo of you and your family here, which really embodies the energy that you all present to the world. I also want to let the listeners know that as you go to the Learn button on the website, they have offerings for you on video tutorials. So, for instance, you can get tutorials on how to even install their product, tips for cleaning the high chair placemat, cushion hacks for older babies. You can also learn more about safe high chair positioning, how pediatric feeding specialists explain what good positioning looks like and why it's important. Also, they added an amazing footrest to the business. As Katie mentions, pediatric feeding specialists explain as to why footrests are essential in the high chair feature. So all of these things are beautiful offerings on the site that have so much more to give to these young parents as they're making their way through what are really critical developmental years.
Yeah, so when I started Baby Goods, my main goal was like, this is a high chair that could be made cuter. It could be made to, I know you mentioned our home decor, but that's like something Brent and I both get excited about. It's like, this piece of furniture is out on my house all day and I want to jazz it up. So that was why we started it. People were on board with that idea. But the further I learned, like hung out in this baby feeding world and started listening into some of the experts, and honestly, our customers were like, coming at me all the time saying, "What, we need a footrest. Can you make us a footrest? Like, that's so important." I'm like, at this point, I've had 2 kids in my high chair, and I'm like, they seemed fine without a footrest. I don't know why you need a footrest. And it's like, no, we don't need it. And I just kept getting so many people asking that I started doing the research myself and listening to the experts. And I was like, whoa, there's this whole field of baby positioning, like a safe way to sit in a high chair. And a huge part of that is having foot support. And so it's like, wow, all these people are really right. And this is something that we can totally make. And so we added that in 2019. And honestly, that was around the time like, Baby Goods just exploded. Like, it had been a very slow, steady growth up until that point. But in 2019, when we added that footrest, all of our customers were right, which is why you should always listen to the customer. But it was like, it was the missing piece. Yes. And it became something where it's like, like I said, I've had 2 kids in the side chair. I knew nothing about this. This was so, my goal through Instagram started being like, let's just help educate parents on this. They can still make the call on their own, but like, it's something I didn't know anything about. And so maybe it's something other moms felt that same way. This is a wildly popular high chair because it's so cheap. And so there might be a lot of moms that didn't know this, and their baby could be sitting in a safer way that would lower their risk of choking. And they didn't even know it was something as easy as adding a footrest to their high chair. So I started doing more educational things on that. From there, we wanted to start adding feeding accessories. And so instead of just making a cute spoon, I was like, let's do the same thing with the high chair. Instead of just making it cute, let's make it pretty and developmentally appropriate for a baby, which again is not my field of expertise. But I was like, I can partner with a feeding specialist to design something that will be. And so, like, Brent and I keeping an eye on the design and what it looks like, but relying heavily on this feeding therapist to talk about like, what are all the things we need to make sure our utensil, which is going into a baby's mouth, is covering where it's not going to hinder them developmentally as they're learning to eat. And so not only do I want to make the products around that, but I want to help educate on those kind of things and anything I've learned in the process through following a lot of baby-led weaning accounts or baby feeding, baby development, anything that like I can pass that along to our customers in case they haven't heard it. I love to be able to do that. I feel like that's something that I've gotten excited about as I've learned more. But even more so on our Instagram, like I see it as a place, like you said, where it's more about sharing about our family. It's more about sharing light and hope to young moms. Parenthood can be a really lonely thing. It can feel really hard and like not a lot of appreciation. And especially when you're at home with your first or you're in the trenches, I think it's really important to find a community, whether it's in real life or on Instagram. And I want it to be a place where it's like, yeah, you're going to get a cute high chair. Yes, you might learn some feeding tips, but more, I just want to be a place where you're going to feel uplifted when you're there, that you're going to feel heard. If you're commenting or leaving messages, you're going to get a reply. Like, we care about you as individuals. Recently, we just started doing something where it's like, on any order in the notes section, you can leave a prayer request or leave your child's name and we'll pray a blessing over you. Like, it's pretty anonymous because yes, it has your name on it, but we don't know you at all. And it's like, we actually really do care about you. And we're not a company that's like trying to maximize profits. And that's not the end goal. It's very much so this like, God called us into Baby Goods. He's the one who grew Baby Goods. And how can we use what he's given us to bless other people, whether it's just kind of an inspirational video on like something encouraging on Yeah Baby Goods, like you're doing a great job, Mom, or so showing a glimpse of our family, or whether it's just like being able to connect and communicate with people on a one-on-one in our messages. Like that's a really important part of Yeah Baby Goods for us now. The biggest part, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that customers can feel that and they sense that. Even more so today, I know I personally look for brands that are giving back, that are more concerned about my well-being versus the profit. And that certainly shines through on your website as well. To your point around really giving some value to the customer, even through the website on safe high chair positioning, some video tutorials, the blog, and just a bonus, a beautiful high chair. And the ability, just putting this out there because
yeah, right. Because that's still, I mean, that's still the bread and butter of it. But
yes, and it's fun and it's playful and it's beautiful. And the idea that you can get onto your website and customize the high chair as well, which I found to be so much fun. I'm personally past the phase of needing the high chair, but I thought it was so interactive and so much fun to go on and customize the high chair, from the cushion cover to the placement on the high chair to the legs to the footstool. So amazing. Yeah.
Brent was always playing on those, like, build your car, or he built his one wheeler, like customized it. And I was like, oh, we totally need something on our website like that. That is so fun to play around on. But yeah, it's back to what I said, like motherhood can be, you're in it for the long game. And there's some days that are really, really hard. And so I do believe things, even really silly, like I know this isn't important in the long scale, but like looking over and seeing a high chair that sparks a little bit of joy, like I think that there is something to that, where it's like the days are long, but like, find like the small things that are like, and that really is a bright spot of my life. Yeah. So if I have time, there was something you said that really struck me, where you were talking about like the growth of the business and the reason behind Yeah Baby Goods. And it had me thinking back to, as I mentioned, 2019 was the year, like, it just all of a sudden, we were like hanging in there, making it work. But we still had that super low mortgage. So it was like, it's fine if it does well, it's fine if it doesn't. And then in 2019, just a couple things happened where it was like boom, boom, boom. And it was like, whoa, all of a sudden, Yeah Baby Goods was just like becoming like this presence, this thing. And it coincided with COVID, when supplies were incredibly hard to get. And so then we became this brand that was like high demand, but people couldn't get a hold of. And it only increased our appeal. I know a lot of businesses really struggled during COVID, but it was an interesting dynamic for us, where it was like we were just kind of making a name for ourselves, and all of a sudden people couldn't get our stuff, which made it, I mean, obviously supply and demand, it made it in higher demand. And so it was like, we would do these launches.
Desirable. Yeah.
It was crazy. We would do these launches, and our sewing team is local, and they were about to sell, they can sew about 700 to 1,000 cushion covers a week. And so every Friday we would list what we had, and within 3 minutes, like they would all be gone, and people weren't even getting patterns they wanted. It was just like, we'd get comments and people would be like, I feel like I won the lottery. And I was like, you just got a cushion cover. Like, you didn't win anything. Like, you paid us money, actually. But it was this surreal thing. And so up until this point, Brent and I had been doing it solely by ourselves. The whole point was to do this together as a family, and to have more time to be as a family, and to be able to have this flexibility to go visit Brent's family in South Carolina. And all of a sudden, Yeah Baby Goods, the thing that was supposed to bring us family togetherness, was taking up a huge amount of our time. And instead of like bringing us family togetherness, it was taking away from family togetherness. And it was like, we had to do a pause and like, whoa, wait, like, are we still on the right path? Like, is this where we were supposed to be headed? Because we had this vision, this thing we were pursuing, and Yeah Baby Goods was a tool to get us there. And all of a sudden it's taking us away from there. And it was that idea that I hinted at the beginning, where it's like my idea of success had changed so much, where it's like, this is the success I thought we would be chasing after when we started Fly Fitness years ago. But all of a sudden, it's like success to me was like our family getting to do this together and me getting to be at home with our kids and have like a joint family business. Everything's meshing together life. And all of a sudden, it was like Brent and I are like, up all night and putting our kids in front of the TV more so we can fulfill orders. And it was like, this is not what I'm envisioning. And so we had this long conversation where it was like, okay, do we like stunt Baby Goods growth? Do we cap it? Do we sell it? Like, what is going on here? And it was around that time that my mom sent me a Bible verse. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read it because I'm going to totally botch it up if I don't.
Please.
But this is from Matthew. And as a little spoiler alert, this verse meant so much to me that it's like we started printing it on all of our boxes. And it's like the verse, not just for Baby Goods, but it's really been something our family has latched onto. And it says, "You're here to be a light, bringing out the God colors in the world. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven." And it was like, whoa, okay, that's what Baby Goods is about. Like, it's not about selling high chairs. It's not about making a ton of money. It's about being a light to other people. And we have an opportunity through giving glimpses of our family, through the words and encouragement we speak, to show others the goodness of God, to be his ambassadors. And so it was like this verse just changed everything for us, where it's like, oh, it was God who actually grew Baby Goods. Like I said, there were random things that were happening where all of a sudden it's like this thing. We were getting all these followers on Instagram and people wanting us on podcasts and stuff. And it's like, God, what are you doing here? And he gave us that voice and he's like, this is what I'm doing. I'm putting you on a light stand. Like, I'm not hiding you under a bucket. Like, I want you to be out there telling people about me. I want you to be out there giving hope to families and giving a model of what it looks like to be a close-knit family team and to really prioritize your marriage and your children. And it was like, I just felt like my whole brain was like opened up and I was like, that makes sense. That's what we're here for. And that's why Baby Goods is growing like it is. And it was a total perspective switch for us where it's like, okay, let's lean into that. That's the point.
So tell me about, how does one begin to live in alignment to be able to hear and understand those messages and those downloads?
It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I fully believe that God is trying to speak to us every day. Like, he's pursuing us. And a lot of times we're so busy in our everyday lives that we're not slowing down enough to hear it. And so it's not a day goes by where there's not like something God's putting in your heart, putting in your mind, and you're like, oh, that's a weird thought. It seems like that was random, and you're just like kind of like discard it. But like, I started paying attention to anything that's like, that was not from me. That's not Katie to think that kind of thing. It's like, oh, well, then that was probably God trying to speak to me, because that's not something that would have originated from me. Like, when he tells me to like forgive somebody I'm really mad at, and it's like, I don't want to. It's like, well, that's probably a message that's coming to me from the Holy Spirit. And when I hear somebody say like, give generously of your funds to other people, and it's like, that Katie who still desires the beautiful house, it's like, okay, that's not me. That's something else. And so part of it is just this slowing down and opening up space in your life to be like, God, do you have any messages for me today? Like, is there anything you want to download to me before I start this day? And giving the space, which is definitely something to ask for. And it's still something I'm so trying to do as a mom of four and running a business. There are some days I fail at it miserably. And some days when I create the space and I'm like, my whole day is different because I did that. And so a lot of times it's slowing yourself down and just being like, asking, like you said, and then being aware of the things that are in you that you're like, oh, that's not my nature. So where is that coming from? Like, that seems like a good thing that I wouldn't have thought on my own, and being like, that might be a message. And other times people have messages for you where it's like they've been listening to the Holy Spirit that's been speaking into them, and they have something for you. And I totally believe that's what happened with that Bible verse, where it's like Brent and I were in a season of seeking and not really understanding what was going on in our life and where we were and how did we get here. And my mom speaking that to me, I was like, that was a word from the Lord. Like, he used you as a tool to speak to me because he wanted me to hear that. And it changed how we were doing everything. And so I think it's just having this like head that's looking for it, which I know is hard because we're all driven by to-do lists and by distractions in a very busy world, but just being able to be like, okay, reset, like I'm looking for this. I'm like on a treasure hunt to find the things that God might be dropping in my lap. And if you can open your eyes to that as you're living your day-to-day life, you're still going to have all those other busy things. Those distractions aren't going to go away. But it's like, as you're doing that, you're also looking for those like opportunities, those messages, those like words that it's like, I'm supposed to say this to somebody else in the same way my mom said that to me. Like, you're keeping your eyes open, like I'm on a mission as I'm going about and doing all these other crazy things.
Isn't it funny that when you start to trust that and you kind of build that muscle, that it starts to come easier to you and you start to feel more connected to it? Because finding those moments of stillness, of quiet, we talk so much about that here on Consciously Inspired Minds, which is we have to slow down. We have to find that stillness. We have to find that quiet. To your point, taking a moment to just ask, being open to receive. And just asking, what is it that I need to know today? That's all. Just asking a simple question around, what is it that I need to know today? What is it that I need to know for the highest good? All for the highest good. And then taking that moment and appreciating it, showing gratitude for it. And when you receive those downloads and when you receive those messages, and that grace is showing gratitude. I love that there's awareness also, Katie, around sort of this rebalance that you had mentioned. Like, wow, okay, everything's getting a little, frenetic. We're not in alignment. Potentially we could be in a season. As you mentioned, it's funny because I had written down here, it was at a season of the busy, the output, the doing, and then coming back into that rest and reflection, and that reassessing.
And I do think like there are going to be seasons where it's like, this is not our family mission. We're not living what we pictured, but it is for short term, and knowing like it's important to eventually reevaluate and make sure you're back on the same course. But there are going to be times in life where it's like, and this is for a short time with still the bigger purpose in mind. We have to get through this stretch of it not looking like what we hope to in order to get back to whatever that value, whatever your calling was.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about when you say just getting back on track, getting rebalanced and back into alignment. When you even think about beginning a family mission statement, how did you do that? What does that look like? How would one start a family mission statement?
It's really fun to do. Like I said, Brent and I are wired really differently. So the very first step was like a lot of prayer that like we would be united in this, because we both come from different backgrounds and both prioritize different things. But it was like, I didn't want this to be a divisive thing between Brent and I where we're like fighting over what's going to be in our family mission statement. But we covered it in prayer that it's like, make this something where it's like, honestly, you're giving us the words, you're giving us the calling, and we're just writing it down on paper. And so I think we did it over the course of a couple weeks where it's like, after actually we did it before our first was born, which was kind of nice because we didn't, once you're in the thick of it, it's like, okay, you have after bedtime and you're like, am I totally fried at that point? Exactly. But we luckily did it when I was pregnant with my first and had more time to sit on our porch and be like, what is the Lord saying to us? But it was like, okay, what are the key things that like God has made really important to us? And then we kind of did it like in a fragmented way, and I can share what we ended up with. But the first part of it is like who we are. And then the second part of it the very last part of it. So the first part's who we are. The last part of it is what we want to accomplish. And then the middle part is how we would do those things, how we would accomplish that goal. So ours starts with to be a loving, united family team. And that's who we are. We want to be loving and supportive of each other. We want to be united in the things we're chasing after and in our values. We want to be a team where we're like, encouraging one another. We've got each other's back. So we're this loving, united family team. And then here are the tools we're going to use. We have soft hearts, meaning like we're open-minded. We're not hard-hearted against each other or the people we encounter. We have deep beliefs. So that's where our faith comes in. That's where our faith comes in. Like there are beliefs that we hold to be true. And those things, like we're going to continue deepening those and like trusting in those things. And then our third piece was an intimate relationship with God. And that's that piece that I was talking about before where you're listening, where you're seeking, where you're like, God, I know you have things for me. I know you want a relationship with me. And so I'm going to lean into that. I want to intimate, a close relationship with you where it's like a back and forth. It's me talking, it's you talking, it's me listening, it's you listening, and this close relationship. So it's like a loving, united family team with soft hearts, deep beliefs, and an intimate relationship with God in order to make earth look more like heaven. And we kept that broad because it's like there's so many ways as a family team we can make earth look more like heaven. Every time we encourage somebody, that's making earth look more like heaven. Every time we use our money to help somebody instead of just giving ourselves more comfort, that's making earth look more like heaven. When my kids go pick up litter on the side of the road, I'm like, you just made earth more like heaven, because in heaven there's forgiveness, there's joy, there's no more tears, there's like this just unconditional love, and there's beauty, and there's no more chaos, there's order. And so anytime like we can bring chaos to order or add beauty into our life or create new things, like that's all making this earth that we're living on more like the heaven that we are looking forward to and that our hope is in. And so that's kind of how we ended up doing our family mission statement, was like thinking of like, who do we want to be? What do we want to accomplish? And then what are the things that are going to help us accomplish that?
Yeah. So who, what, and what's going to help. Yeah. And we'll put that in the show notes as well, just to give folks a little bit of framework in how they begin to make that mission statement. And maybe that could be a blog as well for Yeah Baby Goods, because I would love to read more about that as well.
I should be. I really should be.
Yeah. Feeling super inspired by that. And you had mentioned finding, I guess, more peace in the chaos, if you will. And I also want to make note, and I say this because I also want to make note that Katie and Brent also homeschool their children. So they homeschool their children, they have a business, and then they also own Airbnbs. So they also own some properties. So what would be some tips that you could offer our listeners as we begin to wrap things up here? Some opportunities that our listeners could take away around finding peace through the chaos, even if it's specific to parents, because I know that's the world that you're in, encouraging those young parents, and things that you have posted about as well on Instagram. I've seen them myself. So what are some of those things that we could do to kind of come back to that calm and that peace in moments of chaos or stress?
Yeah, it would definitely be, for me personally, so much reliant on my faith and where my hope is. And so when things get too crazy for me, like I have a maker, a creator who put me in this spot and who cares about me. And so it's like one of those things where it's a combination of like casting your burdens onto him and being like, I know you're not going to like abandon me. I know that you're here with me. You're walking side by side me. And that alone like gives me so much peace, where it's like that idea of remembrance and looking back on the ways where it's like, I was in over my head before and you pulled me up out of it. And like, I found solid ground again. And those remembering the times you were taken care of before and being like, okay, like that's going to happen again. I can trust this God that I believe in. And, I think making those times for quiet and for peace, where you're like seeking and listening and allowing yourself to like know the maker who cares about you. That for me is like my greatest source of peace. And beyond that, it's like my family, like gratitude and looking at the things that you're incredibly thankful for, remembering like all these are gifts from an incredible gift giver and carrying that with you. Gratitude and just a feeling of seeing all the ways he's worked for you in the past and believing in his goodness. Yeah. Those are all the things that are bringing me peace. My family being the biggest gift that I have, and the thing that it's like refocusing me in new ways, where it's like, how can you not look at those 4 little kids and feel just immensely thankful? How can you not look at living in America and the peace and the privilege we have here? And so it's like those kind of things, knowing all of that is something that like God put me in this time, in this place with these people. And none of that is by accident. Are the ways that it's like when the world feels really crazy, it's like, this is the point, like wrestling through some of this chaos. I'm here for a reason. Like you put me in this time in this place for a reason, and you're not going to leave me high and dry here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think just a good reminder for folks to come back to the feeling, to come back to the feeling. What is it? Because at the end of the day, when we set the goals, when we have these aspirations, it's all about coming to the feeling that we want to feel. Feeling that peace, feeling that connection, feeling that calm, feeling that family togetherness, feeling that you can be a beacon of hope or light for other people. And so how do you get closer to that? Through the choices and the decisions that we're making to live a consciously inspired life. So Katie, thank you so much for being here today. So many wonderful things that you shared with us today. And we wish you all the best at Yeah Baby Goods. What a beautiful mission you have and purpose. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find us. Our website is just yeahbabygoods.com. We're most active on Instagram, which is yeahbabygoods is our handle. All one word, no spaces. And we're a little bit on Facebook. We're a little bit on TikTok, but definitely Instagram is where I'm most engaged and directly like being able to communicate with the followers there. And so, I mean, I'm somebody that is extremely passionate about family, about small business, entrepreneurship, my faith. And so if there are any of these anything in this conversation that it's like, oh, that really piqued my interest, or I feel like I want to talk with somebody more about this, like I'm very engaged and excited to connect with new people on Instagram. And that would probably be the best way to get a hold of me. If there's anything in this that you're like, I feel like that was something God was speaking to me and I want to lean into that. Like, I'm here. I'm very accessible. It's something that I love to get to share with others and walk alongside their journey.
Beautiful. What an amazing opportunity for our listeners. Yes, if there is anyone out there who is feeling called by something in this interview and wants to connect with Katie, please do so. Please do so. This is your download. This is your opportunity. Thank you so much. Yes. Wonderful. Well, Katie, thank you so much for being here. We will talk soon.
Yes. Thank you, Brandy. It was really fun to get to dialogue with you. It was such a very natural conversation. I'm always kind of nervous about these interviews, but this one was very fun to do.
Good. I'm so glad. So much fun. Well, thank you so much. And I'll be looking for that blog on Yeah Baby Goods for how to build the family mission. Really excited for that. Awesome. Okay. All right, everybody. Till next time. That's all for today. Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. If you'd like to learn more about Consciously Inspired Minds, you can visit us at consciouslyinspiredminds.com. Until we connect again, explore what inspires you.